Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to be removing the timing cover on our Mustang GT. We had a loose chain, so we're going to look at the tensioners and the guides, everything that's down in there. So this will be a step-by-step video. We're going to start by removing the cam covers, some of the accessories, and the belt and everything like that. Something important to know is on the 1999 and 2000 and some early 01s, it was a different engine from the Windsor, Ontario plant, and so the valve cover bolts will be different, the gaskets will be different. So make sure that you get the right one for whatever year you're working on. We're going to first remove the negative battery terminal. It's always good when you're working on anything. And we're going to take an 8mm socket here, and up by the throttle body, we're going to loosen this band. Intake away from the throttle body. And we're going to go ahead and unplug our throttle position sensor and also our idle air control valve sensor, just to give us some more room as we're pulling on some wires here. The two vacuum hoses came off as well that were going into the intake. We're going to unplug the ambient air temperature sensor, and we loosened the band down there as well with the 8mm socket so we could pull the intake off. Okay, next we're just coming through. There's a plug here, and we're just unplugging this as well off of the cam cover. We're going to come through here now. This is kind of difficult. You're going to have a wiring harness that's going on all these studs. And so there's really no way to get these off other than trying to get some pliers under them and popping up on them. Some of them will break. They're brittle and they go onto the studs. As you can see, I put the pliers underneath here and just kind of wedged up on them, and that seemed to be the best way to get these to pop off. So just some pliers under them, just kind of wedge it up. And you might have some luck, but we're going to go ahead and do that everywhere we can find this wiring harness going over the cam cover. So these are all the bolts here. We'll be taking them off soon here. First, we're going to unplug our coil packs. So you just push on the clip and pull it straight back, and you'll unplug all four of these on each side. Okay, some of these are a little tight to get into. Okay, and with those unplugged, we're also going to do the injectors. So these you just pinch on each side and unplug these. And this, just do that on all of them. So now we're taking a 7mm socket, and we're taking off the bolts for each of these coil packs. Okay, now these should just now pull right up out. I did have a few where the boot stayed down in there and the top part came apart, and that happens every once in a while. Just put it back together. But we'll pull all these coils out. Now we're taking our 8mm socket, and we're going to go after all these. So it has to be a deep socket to go over a lot of these studs. So we're just going to go and remove every one of these going all the way through here. Okay, so this is what I also did. I had a little U-joint one. That helped me get down into the bottom here. So there's a kind of a longer one down here that has the stud. And as you can see, this is how I was able to get to it with that little U-joint. So you probably would need to go get a nice little U-joint in that deep socket. At this point, it'd be good to replace the cam cover gaskets if you have new ones, but we will be able just to have these lifted up slightly and pull the timing cover off without removing the gaskets, since mine are good. But you can see the slack in the chain here. So I went ahead and got the car moved into the garage where we can work on it without worrying about dirt and grime and everything getting into the engine. You want to have enough space to lift the car in a good solid area, because we will have to support the engine and lift the car in a few places. So I then just went on the driver's side. I did the same process, took out the coil packs, unplugged the fuel injectors. Everything we did on the passenger side, we're just repeating over here on the driver's side. The driver's side is just as difficult, if not more, with a lot of these connectors. And so we did have to pull those off. Something that we did have to also use is that little 3/8" drive or 1/4" drive with the U-joint. So that came in handy on this side as well. As you can see, getting down in here between the brake lines and everything, especially back here by the brake booster, we went between the master cylinder and the brake booster, as you can see, with an extension and a U-joint, and that was the best way to get to that bolt. So that was just the 10mm going all the way around, and we just took out all of the bolts just like we did on the passenger side. And a magnet definitely helps. Next, we're taking our 10mm socket while the belt is still on the car, and we're going to break loose our water pump pulley bolts. Okay, so there's 4 of these here, and we're just basically getting in and breaking them loose. We're not going to take them off yet. We still have tension from the belt on here, so we don't want to mess up any of the hardware. We're just breaking them loose. Next, make sure the car is in gear. I put it in 4th even, and we're taking an 18mm socket, and what we're going to do is put it on the front of the crank dampener. Okay, now we're not going to be able to pull the pulley off yet. We'll need a puller for that, but we're going to go ahead and break this one loose. It's on there good and tight, so go lefty-loosey, counterclockwise. Next, we're taking our reducer, and we're going to go from 1/2 inch down to 3/8 so we can get it into our tensioner here. And as you pull on the tensioner like this, now we can remove the belt. So go ahead and take that off and remove the belt entirely. So with the belt off, now we can take out our water pump pulley bolts, and so we'll go ahead and just slide this off. Next, we're taking an 11mm socket, and we're putting it on this little nut right here that holds the air conditioning discharge hose on. We don't need to take the nut all the way off, just loosen it, and then since it's on here with a little slit cut, we can just move it out of the way. Next, we're taking a 13mm socket, and we're going to go after our power steering bolts. So there's 3 of these. There's a bolt right here, and then there's 2 nuts, one here and one here. So we'll go ahead and remove all 3 of those. Now we can pull the whole power steering pump assembly away, and we're going to also do the cam position sensor here, so just pinch it and pull it out just to get it away from here. Now we're also going to take the battery out just to give us a little bit more room. We already have the negative undone. We're taking our 8mm socket here to take off the tie down, so we just unratchet that, and then we'll also undo the positive side and just pull the battery out. So with that all undone, we can pull the battery out, and this will give us some space just to put the power steering reservoir and everything kind of up over into this area. I also took a bungee and just held the power steering pump to the side. And anywhere that I take a nut off that I can put back on, I'll do that just so that it's easier to keep track of everything. Next, we're going to take an 18mm socket for the crankshaft. And so, as you can see here, we're going to put this on the front of the crankshaft with the car in neutral, and you're able to spin the crankshaft. So what we're going to do is line up this little notch. You can see a small notch cut in the back of the harmonic balancer, and you have 10 degrees before top dead center, and we're going to move it until that notch is lined up with top dead center. That'll just help us if we do end up doing more timing things. Right now we're just going to be replacing a tensioner as it seems, but you never know when you open it up and decide to do more. So we're going to leave it at top dead center. Next, we'll lift the car into the air. Make sure that the wheels are properly chocked because we're lifting the front of the car up in the air. You want to make sure the car does not roll. So leave the car in gear and make sure that the parking brake is up. And we're going to go underneath the car and we're going to lift with the floor jack. So we're going to lift back here on this frame rail support, and then we're going to put a jack stand towards the front. So make sure that it's good and solid and not going to fall down. Then we'll go around to the other side, put a jack stand in the same spot, lifting in the same places. Just make sure the car's level and not going to fall. Now on the power steering pump, there are 4 bolts, and 3 of them we can take out very easily. And so the first 2 are up here at the top. You can see there's one here. There's one here behind it. And then the 2 on the bottom, this one's going to be very easy to get out. However, as you see, there's one that's right here behind this power steering line. And that bolt is actually so long, it won't come out. And if you're not careful, as you take it out, it will hit the power steering line. So we want to drop the pump with it. So what we're going to do is take our 10mm socket, and we're going to take out the other 3 bolts first. So now as we take the last bolt out, it'll drop the pump down with it as we loosen it. So we're going to use a 10mm ratcheting wrench with the bendable head. That's the best tool that I've found to get in here. And so we're going to put it right in here behind the power steering line and get onto that. And these are on here pretty firm. I actually had to get the jack handle and use it to kind of as a cheater bar to put over it to break it loose. but then you're able to slowly ratchet this last bolt. And so what you'll notice is as you're ratcheting it, it will slowly be dropping the pump down. And you'll be able to then drop the pump down and out of the way. So on reinstallation, you want to make sure that that bolt is the first one that you put in. And then once it's up and in there, then you can install the other 3. This is the view of this bolt. As you can see, look how long it is, and see how it would hit the power steering line. So if you're doing this bolt first, there's enough pressure to bend that line as you're ratcheting it. You'll be ratcheting, you'll be wondering why it's not
Okay, next we're going to move over to the air conditioning, and it's the same thing, a 10mm socket. However, there's only 3 bolts on this side. It looks like there's 4, so don't take out the wrong one. You want to take out this one here at the top, and then these 2 at the bottom. This one in the top left corner, don't take that one out. That's not a bolt securing it in. So these are pretty long bolts, but you'll go ahead and just drop all 3 of those bolts out and then move the whole AC compressor down and out of the way. Now we'll take an 11mm socket, and we're going to take out some of these studs that are holding the bracket that holds wiring harnesses that are on the front of the timing chain cover. So go ahead and remove that nut. Now we can just slide that bracket out of the way. Now we're going to take an 8mm socket, and we're going to remove the crank position sensor. You could leave this on, but I don't want to damage the sensor in removing everything. So we're going to go ahead and just take this little bolt out here. And then you can just pull the sensor straight out and let it hang down here. Next, we're going to remove this sensor here on the oil filter housing, just to get it out of the way, so basically nothing gets broken there. Now we're going to take a 13mm socket, and we're taking out this nut over here so that we can remove the wiring harness off of the front of the timing cover on this side. At this point, we'll take our 5/8" socket, and we're just going to remove the oil drain plug and drain the oil. You could do this step a little bit later if you feel like any contaminants might get into the oil as you continue to work. This oil was almost new, so I put it back into a container, so that's why I wanted to drain it now. Now we'll make sure that the car is in 4th gear, nice and firm. We're going to take our 18mm socket, and we're going to break the crank pulley bolt loose. Next, we're going to move the crankshaft until it lines up to top dead center with that little notch, just for good measure as we take everything apart. And now we can just remove that bolt by hand and set it out of the way. And now we're going to use a tool specifically for pulling the harmonic balancer. I'll put a link in the description where you can pick one of these up. And we're going to get some PB blaster, some penetrating oil. And I like to spray the holes that we're going to be using. That way you get all the junk out of there from dirt and grime and the belt shreds and everything that's in there. We want to make sure that we thread these bolts properly, because if you mess these up, it's really hard to get the balancer off. Next, we're going to test fit the bolts. So find the bolts that fit, make sure that they go in straight, and just make sure you don't punch all the way through and hit the timing cover. It'd be kind of hard to do that, but you could if you went too deep with the bolts. But we're just going to get them started. Now, this is what it looks like on the actual puller. As you can see, we're using the flat surface on the puller so that the bolts hit it like this. So that's the way that it should look. And we're just going to line it up now and put those bolts back in. And again, just make sure that they're threading straight. You don't want them cross threading. They all need to go in pretty much the same distance, so you can kind of look at them directly from the bottom and make sure that they're pretty straight going in, and we're going to pull evenly. Now we're going to take a socket wrench. In my case, a ratcheting wrench worked best for the clearance that was involved. We're putting it on the end here, and as we tighten it, it will pull the balancer right off. Here it is sped up. You can see it as it moves the balancer away and comes right off. Note that on the balancer itself, there is a keyway notched on the back, as you can see here. So it does pretty much only go on one way back onto the crankshaft. So anyway, the threads, as you can see here, I even could have gone a little bit deeper, but they were deep enough. You just don't want them to be shallow that it pulls it out. Next, we're going to take a 13mm socket and remove this idler pulley over here. That will help us access some of our timing cover bolts. So just remove that. And then we're going to take the same size, the 13mm. We're going to go around and we're going to basically take off anywhere that there are timing cover bolts. Now, as you're going through here, and going all around, do not take out any of the water pump bolts. See, the water pump is right near it. It also has 13mm bolts, so make sure you don't get those. And we're just going around and getting all of the bolts on the front of the timing cover. There are some studs that are also hidden in here, like behind this one right here. So you'll take the nut off, and then the stud behind it is a slightly bigger socket. And I went around in order, and I put all these in order of how they came out. Some of the studs are a little bit longer than the others. So once again, the studs are going to be different sizes, lengths on some of these. So there's a 13mm on one side. You just want to keep them in order. And then, you know, for another example, here's a 13mm one. On the bottom, there was a 13mm on one side, and the other side was a 18mm. And so the top one as well, for example, had an 18mm stud. So here's a picture that you can freeze. This is all of the bolts lined up. The bottom two of the screen are at the bottom, and then it just goes clockwise or counterclockwise. Next, I took a 13mm socket, and I took out the front oil pan bolts, and on the back ones, I actually just loosened them, but I didn't take them out all the way. That way, everything is still lined up, and I don't have to remove the pan entirely. I needed a 13mm ratcheting bendable wrench to get up into this one. It was kind of a tight fit. So if you have that 13mm bendable wrench, I would recommend having one of those for sure. We've already used those bendable wrenches today. And also some U-joints helped out. But again, I just dropped most of the bolts, but not all the way, just so I could get the oil pan to drop down like this, where it's just slightly separating. I then took a flat chisel and kind of put it in and popped the oil pan down. If your oil pan's really old, it might be brittle and break, so just caution on that. But I just kind of put it in there and gently pried on it, and I was able to get the whole oil pan gasket off of the timing covers, you can see on both sides. And so now I had a nice clear shot on the bottom. We didn't have to take the pan all the way out, and the pan is still lined up on the back with the other bolts. Now we also removed the cam covers earlier. They're usually glued down towards the front of the timing cover as well. So same thing, I just went in with my little flat spade here and just kind of cut it so that they were no longer attached. And we'll do that, of course, on both sides. Now I took a rubber mallet and I gently gave it a little tap here right on the corner. And then with that flat spade, gently pry it away. Now make sure that all of the bolts are gone. If it's not giving, then stop. And some of these timing cover bolts are hidden back in there. I took out a stud on the left too that looked like it didn't really affect the timing cover, but just make sure everything's out. Now you'll be able to pull this timing cover forward, and then as you pull it forward, you'll just flip it upside down and pull it right out. So anyway, that's how you remove the front timing cover. It's pretty similar on the 4-valve. I'll put a video in this description that shows that. In my case, I had a timing tensioner that's punched through the timing tensioner arm. And so please, at this point, do not remove any tensioners. You can jump the timing. We're going to want to mark the timing relationship on this. So just stay tuned for more videos and check the video description where I'll put a playlist with more videos that are like this. But this is a quick video to show you how loose this timing chain was. And you could imagine why I was hearing a knocking, tapping sound. So this is what the timing chain tensioner looked like. You can see it's been ground down at an angle pretty bad. And it basically punched through the timing tensioner arm and was rubbing against the chain. So here's the timing tensioner arm, and as you can see, the plastic is gone, the clear looking orange plastic, and it punched straight through. So it's pretty common on the 4.6 Mustangs. At this point, we can go ahead and remove the crankshaft pulley bolt and remove this reluctor wheel for the crankshaft position sensor. Make sure those teeth are pointed forward when you install. And just for good measure, we're going to go ahead and make some relationship marks here on the crank, one at the dot at the bottom, and then come up to the timing cover here, and where you can find the dot at the top, mark it. Make sure it's marked. It's hard to find the factory markings on this one, so we're going to do that for our own reference. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please check the video description for more videos like this and the continuation of this one. If you're new to the channel, please feel free to subscribe. Thanks, guys.